Manuela Stecher is a cheerful, intelligent woman, the lucky mother of 2 healthy children, and has a fulfilling work life. She has an MBA and works in the administrative office of a school. In her free time, she volunteers in the German Patients Association for Phenylketonuria. Manuela Stecher was born with a rare metabolic disorder known as phenylketonuria, PKU for short, just like her sister who is 8 years older. But other than Ilona, Manuela was diagnosed at birth and immediately treated with a low-protein diet and a supplement of chemically split proteins. Thus, her dangerous Phe level was reduced to a healthy range. For this early diagnostic method and her successful treatment, Manuela Stecher has one person to thank, Professor Horst Bickel. Who was this doctor so many people owe an almost normal life, despite being born with this congenital metabolic disorder? Horst Bickel was born in Hamburg on June 28, 1918, and studied medicine in Berlin, Lausanne and Freiburg. After completing his clinical studies in Innsbruck and Vienna, he was called into the Naval Medical Service as a 25-year-old. After World War II, his first 2 jobs as an assistant physician were real lucky chances. At the Hamburg University Children's Hospital, he was influenced by its director Rudolf Deckwitz. After his experiences with the Nazis, Deckwitz had a very clear position regarding the education of the next generation. After that, Bickel got the best possible foundation for broad clinical knowledge from Guido Fanconi, the director of the Children's Hospital at the University of Zurich. Professor Nützenadel was the senior chief physician and deputy director of the Heidelberg Children's Hospital for many years. What was his impression of Horst Bickel? Professor Bickel came to Heidelberg in 1968. For his colleagues, it was not surprising that phenylketonuria and metabolic disorders soon became a major part of the clinic's activities. But they were surprised of some other innovations he introduced and that had a strong impact on the hospital. He established bedside teaching to give students the opportunity of learning from experiences with real patients and not only from lectures in the university auditorium. As clinical director, he implemented collegial management, which means important decisions were made jointly by a management board of senior and assistant physicians. This management board was made up of senior physicians and residents. He fostered a department system to entrust doctors with different specialties with clinical responsibilities, because he was aware that the individual clinic director could no longer claim to have the entire pediatric knowledge. Because research was his great interest, he exempted certain collaborators from clinical tasks. Through his previous work, he created international connections. That included the individual opportunity to present research results and to continue scientific studies at research centers abroad. In 1949, with his third publication, Introduction to Paper Chromatography, Horst Bickel had already found his research field. This is a method to make amino acids visible in body fluids. Professor Bickel and Professor Fanconi introduced it at the Children's Hospital of Zurich University. With this, they discovered a rare disease called Fanconi-Bickel syndrome. With this ingenious method, the experienced examiner gets a quick overview of a patient's protein metabolism. This was what Horst Bickel affectionately called his spot chart, a reference system for paper chromatography created by Dr. Charles E. Dent. It was used to identify amino acids on a piece of filter paper. Horst Bickel continued the work of this man in Birmingham, England, the next station of his career. To establish standard values for the amino acid levels in urine and blood, he collected samples from numbers of children. During this work, Bickel came across a 2-year-old girl whose fate was destined to change the PKU treatment around the world. Little Sheila Jones showed no interest in her surroundings and did not respond to her mother's voice. Her hair was messy and she had a rash on her face, and she smelled like mice. These are all symptoms of a rare metabolic disorder that had been described in the 30s by Norwegian professor Ivan Asbjørn Følling, a disease that British geneticist Lionel S. Penrose called phenylketonuria. Professor N. Green, a colleague of Horst Bickel from Birmingham, remembers.
This is the former Birmingham Children's Hospital where Horst Bickel came to work in 1949. Amino acid investigation was an area of interest that had been developed here by Leonard Parsons, Professor of Paediatrics, and Dr. Evelyn Hickmans, head of the Biochemistry Laboratory. From October 1949 to March 1952, Horst Bickel studied, under the supervision of Professor Smelly, the blood and urine amino acid patterns from children with various disorders. This work culminated with a PhD from Birmingham University. Dr. John Gerard, a paediatrician, was also working here and had established a special clinic for children with mental retardation. Ferric chloride testing was introduced into Dr. Gerard's clinic by Horst Bickel. Because of Sheila's clinical features, her urine was tested. The test was positive, and Drs. Gerard and Bickel recorded this was only the second child they had tested. After the full details of the diet had been worked out, Horst Bickel gave this to Sheila. Her natural protein had been replaced with this amino acid mixture, now with reduced phenylalanine, which had been produced in the laboratory. Within a few months, Sheila began to take more interest in her surroundings and played more. She was brighter and began to make eye contact and could sit and began to stand. When Sheila was challenged with normal amounts of phenylalanine in her diet, she quickly deteriorated. Once returned to the phenylalanine restricted diet, she improved. Sheila eventually walked unaided and made further progress in her development. This was the first time a person with PKU had been treated with a diet.
The effectiveness of Horst Bickel's treatment method was proven.
The significance of the work undertaken in Birmingham in 1952 by Drs. Bickel, Gerard and Hickmans cannot be overestimated in terms of how it has improved the lives of all those with PKU today. The dietary treatment of Sheila was the stimulus to try treatment in younger patients where their development and IQ could be monitored over time. This was important in order to justify the case for newborn screening. We must not forget the huge contribution of Sheila and her family. Sadly, Sheila could not benefit long term.
In 1962 in Philadelphia, Hickmans, Bickel and Gerard received the prestigious John Scott Award for their work. In this lab, Professor Bickel and we have developed the basis for a safe phenylalanine-free food. But it would not have been possible without industrial support by the Maizena company, represented by Dr. Ursula Wachtel. The product should be safe, but more than that, it should also taste better than anything that had been produced so far. For the first time, the principle of the nutritional therapy called the Pku Diet, which was developed by Horst Bickel, Louise Wolff and Evelyn Hickmans, served as an unprecedented and very successful pattern for the treatment of a genetic disease. In the following years, many other diseases could be tackled and successfully treated similar to PKU. This was a fantastic innovation. A treatment for PKU patients was found. However, there was no method in sight to early identify the dangerous metabolic disorder that was applicable for masses of newborns. Phenylketonuria is hereditary. Whenever a child is born with PKU, it means that both father and mother have inherited the genetic trait. 1 out of every 50 citizens is a genetic carrier for PKU. The niece of American microbiologist Robert Guthrie suffered from PKU. It was recognized too late, so she was disabled. With the diaper test that was available at this time, it was not possible to diagnose the disease before the newborn was a few weeks old and phenylpyruvic acid was excreted in the urine. Moreover, the test was not applicable to test masses of newborns. With his professional expertise, Robert Guthrie developed a simple, reliable and fast test method that offered the opportunity to diagnose PKU before symptoms appeared. Professor Levy, how did the Guthrie test work?
Blood specimen is taken from the heel of the baby and placed onto filter paper, just a drop of blood. That filter paper is sent to a state laboratory where it is put onto a plate containing agar, which shows the growth of bacteria around the blood specimen, and that growth of bacteria indicates that the baby has an elevated phenylalanine and therefore has PKU.
Even if each individual test was cheap, it required huge persuading efforts to enforce comprehensive screening of all newborns across borders. Why was there so much resistance to introducing it at first?
Dr. Guthrie had a great deal of difficulty introducing the test for all babies. First of all, some people said the test did not work properly. That, of course, was not true. Then, when he went to public health laboratories, they said, well, it is ridiculous to test every single baby for such a rare condition as PKU, so we will not do it. And thirdly, there was a notorious doctor in the United States called Dr. Sam Bessman, who went around the country saying the diet did not work. As a matter of fact, he said some babies were even killed by the diet. Dr. Guthrie and Dr. McCready were able to get the test going.
In 1955, Horst Bickel and his family moved back to Germany, from Birmingham to Marburg in Hesse. He did his utmost to ensure that Dr. Guthrie's method was also implemented as a standard test for all newborns in his native country. He had to overcome all kinds of resistance. Can you imagine that today a doctor, no matter how renowned he may be, would be able to successfully recommend a blood test for every newborn? It's almost inconceivable. But even 50 years ago, for organizational and bureaucratic reasons, it was extremely difficult for Professor Bickel to introduce newborn screening in every federal state in Germany. This is the former office of Professor Bickel in the Children's Hospital of the University of Heidelberg, where he has been called in the meantime. Vigorously, he fought against many obstacles. He tried to convince the state governments to introduce the Guthrie test nationwide in Germany. He knew each one-year delay resulted in more than 100 children suffering for their whole life. On May 1st, 1969, the time had come. A few days after birth, every newborn in Germany was automatically examined within the Guthrie test. We talked to Manuela Stecher, who was the first child that has been diagnosed after the implementation of the nationwide screening in Germany. Today, she is a board member of the German Patients Association for Phenylketonuria and Allied Disorders, or DIG-PKU for short. What we are talking about is fascinating. What is the most important mission of this patients' advocacy group that was founded here in Heidelberg on December 1st, 1975, supported by Professor Bickel? Patients' associations like DIG-PKU in Germany give those affected the feeling they are not alone with their worries and problems. Only together we can successfully advocate for our needs with the healthcare system. What are the most important accomplishments that DIG-PKU has achieved for the patients? The introduction of newborn screening and the development of the Pku diet were accomplishments. No patients' association is able to achieve anything like this. We can offer patients of all age groups and their relatives to attend seminars and meetings in their regional groups in order to share their experiences and gather information on latest discoveries and knowledge on the diseases and the treatment. We have successfully integrated the group of late diagnosed Pku patients and patients suffering from allied disorders such as maple syrup urine disease or neurotransmitter deficiencies into the DIG-PKU. What are the most urgent tasks and objectives for the DIG-PKU in the next few years? It has been over 60 years now since Professor Bickel launched the first dietary experiments with little Sheila. But still, the message did not come across to the public that Pku diet is not a food trend, but a medically necessary nutritional therapy. Moreover, we urgently need more capacities to ensure adequate care for a growing number of adult patients. Last, but surely not least, it is most important that treatment costs remain or will be covered by mandatory health insurance of public funds. Today, every patient, every mother can drip some blood from their child onto a filter paper and send it to a suitable laboratory and receive the exact phenylalanine level within a short time. In recent years, the treatment has evolved. The treatment quality and the outcome have improved considerably. Today, there is a much larger variety of different dietary products than before. Thanks to the dedicated work of scientists like Professor Horst Bickel and the engagement of patients' associations and their members, millions of people with metabolic diseases all over the world have been able to live a self-determined life. But how will it go on? Let's ask Professor Georg F. Hoffmann, director of the Children's Hospital at the University of Heidelberg and Professor Bickel's successor. I'm proud and happy that with new genetic techniques we are able to determine the diagnosis and, more important, the therapies for many metabolic diseases. We are now able to find new therapies and in a short time really tackle a lot of new diseases. Just like with the Pku 50 years ago, we can now really make a difference and positively change the life of the affected patients and their families. Ideally, they can live their normal and healthy lives to the full, like Pku patients can do since many years. Professor Hoffmann, why exactly is Pku viewed as a model disease? It's the most common one amongst these metabolic disorders, and it was the first that really could be treated successfully. However, we still cannot fix the impairments caused by late-treated Pku. That was the reason why Professor Bickel immediately pushed for the newborn screening. All newborns really showing no symptoms have been screened for this disease, and it has been very successful. As a result, 15 additional diseases have been included in German neonatal screening so far. With the special treatments, mostly nutritional therapies, these early diagnosed children remain completely healthy. Pku was the role model for these developments and still pushing us to the next level. Where are we now regarding the treatment of phenylketonuria and allied disorders? In recent years, we have made great progress. Principal treatment has been possible for 50 years. But now, we progressed with new dietary treatments and with the monitoring. Not yet, but likely available soon, a home monitoring test kit will allow patients to check Phe levels at home, similar to diabetes. And what do Professor Hoffmann's colleagues have to say?
Around 10 years ago, a new pharmacological treatment for phenylketonuria was approved. It is BH4 or tetrahydrobiopterin, the natural cofactor of the deficient enzyme phenylalanine hydroxylase. To understand how the new treatment works, we first had to understand what are the consequences of mutations in the phenylalanine hydroxylase gene on the protein. And during 10 years of research, we found out that these mutations lead to protein misfolding of the enzyme PAH. And the new pharmacological treatment corrects this protein misfolding and gives back the right shape to the enzyme, and by this restores the function of the enzyme. So for many patients, this leads to a higher protein tolerance and a more normal diet, but unfortunately only around 40% of patients benefit from this treatment. Currently, we are aware of a number of projects that are looking for new small molecules that correct protein misfolding in PKU, and we also developed a number of candidate molecules that may in future correct protein misfolding also in patients that do not respond to BH4.
Glycomacropeptide, or GMP as we call it for short, is a byproduct of the cheese-making process. The reason why it's important in PKU is that it is naturally low in phenylalanine and it's thought to taste better. And although we have seen some benefits in PKU, particularly in my studies, we've still got a long way to go to see if this is a really useful protein in PKU. There are some drawbacks to using GMP. It does contain a small amount of phenylalanine. So this needs to be taken into account into the diet. We need to calculate this into the diet when we're giving it to people with PKU. Also, GMP is a unique protein. As I mentioned, it is low in phenylalanine, but it's also low in other important amino acids in PKU. Amino acids such as tyrosine, histidine and tryptophan. So this is a promising protein, but we've got a lot of work to do yet.
The future for treatment of PKU is very, very dynamic and very hopeful. First of all, there is a new enzyme treatment for PKU, which would theoretically apply to everybody with PKU, not just some people, but everybody. On the other hand, it may not work in everybody. We do think that it'll work in some individuals by allowing them to be on an entirely normal diet and to maintain an entirely normal blood phenylalanine level. There will be other individuals who, let's say, will not be able to be on an entirely normal diet, will be able to be on a modified diet, but nevertheless will be able to maintain a good phenylalanine level by taking this enzyme therapy. And there may be some individuals who will not respond at all to the enzyme therapy, and therefore it would not apply to them. The enzyme therapy needs to be injected every day. And so consequently, it's not a pill, it's an injectable form of treatment. And it might have difficulties in some individuals with rash, and there may be some individuals will have difficulty with joint pain. And there are other things that people are thinking about in terms of treating PKU. For instance, gene therapy, introducing a normal gene to replace the abnormal gene that people with PKU have, and therefore theoretically would cure PKU. There are people are talking about maybe using this enzyme therapy as a pill instead of an injection, and that is something that some companies are working on.
In future, there will be a wide range of treatment methods for phenylketonuria. Besides dietetics, possibly hepatic cell transplantation, as well as enzyme replacement therapy and perhaps even gene therapy. Here, too, phenylketonuria serves as a model disease. Professor Hoffmann, reports in the lay press repeatedly appear about a genius gene scissor, CRISPR-Cas, that could repair genetic errors without risking the disadvantages of gene therapy. Do you expect this could be used for PKU as well in near future? Unfortunately, not yet. There are really fantastic ways to correct specific gene mutations. We have just shown this for the PKU last year, but only in cells that have been corrected. But that is far from being able to be implemented in animal experiments, not to mention in humans. This will take years. We also are still afraid of side effects. The scissor sometimes makes a wrong cut, and this may cause side effects, including cancers. We hope that these scissors can be improved, whatever their name will be. I'm full of hope that in the next few years classical gene therapy will come up, and CRISPR-Cas maybe in 20 years. We have come a long way. Great progress has been made in the diagnosis and treatment of PKU and allied congenital metabolic disorders. But the work continues, a work that needs to be supported by a committed health policy for the benefit of people who have a right to a self-determined and fulfilling life. In this regard, again, PKU is a role model for a number of other inherited metabolic disorders.